Okay, everybody, welcome to the interactive session. As you know, Thursdays are interactive session. And I have two of my very esteemed colleagues. I've known both of them for, I know it's definitely more than 5 years. Yeah, let's say 5 years plus. Yeah, 5 years plus or 7 years plus. I've known Pearl and Chantal. And um, all the way to even when we just started off the blended online aspect of the PhD. So this format you guys are doing, before then, I've known both of them, for them. So it's actually more than 10 years. Oh my goodness.
EK for myself since 2014, because remember I was working at Disability Services and you had started at Disability Studies.
7 years. 7 years. My goodness. So more than a decade I've known them. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to have them in the room with us. And as you know, this week is focusing on intellectual disability, intellectual impairment, but mostly severe to profound intellectual disability, as you remember. So let me just give you a little bit of rundown of who they are, okay? So I'll start off with Chantal. Let me introduce Chantal first. Chantal has over 13 years of experience in training learners with intellectual disability. In 2018, she completed a postgraduate diploma in disability studies and completed her master's in 2025. Recently applied for PhD in inclusive education at UNISA. But she has also been included in other projects at UCT, like involved with the redesigning blended course project focused on incorporating the principles of UDL in higher education course within the university, which I was also involved in. A range of short courses, including disability studies in education short courses, Lego Braille Bricks short course, and UDL short course. Also, development of the disability studies in education textbook, the digital textbook. So that textbook you guys are reading about, Chantal was involved in it. I'm sure you know, the editor of the DSC course textbook. Yeah, textbook was awarded the UCT Open Education Resource Award in 2025 and has been nominated for a global award. Okay. And then she's also involved in she's currently working at the Inclusive Education Department at UNISA. So she's at UNISA, working on a global project called UGood, and a member of an international collaborative project, UGood for Wellbeing, to promote relational well-being of young people 10 to 24 years with disabilities through digitalization, funded by Foundation Botner and administered by the NRF and HSRC, run from 2026 to 2028. And collaborating with the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences on a scoping review of experiences of families of persons with intellectual disability. So our research interest areas are intellectual disability, particularly caregivers of learners with severe to profound intellectual disability, and their experience of online learning and UDL. So you can see how her areas weaves into Pearl's area also, and her research focus. Well, Pearl, as you know, one of the focus of this week was her masters, which we went through, which you all really resonated with. Okay, her masters, which is in access to quality education for children with severe to profound intellectual disabilities, examining barriers amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and exploring the support of the Department of Basic Education in special care centers in Cape Town. So Pearl is one of those pioneers. You see, why do I say so? Because we were advocating for people who work in disability services. Some of the students will align with what I'm talking about, because some of them are working, in disability units. So we're advocating for people who work at disability services units in universities to get more knowledge around disability inclusion, to do the course. And she was one of the first people who took the mantle and came and did PhD, the masters, and the PhD. Yeah. So, but For me, I know Pearl more fondly as Pearl worked as, so before Tendani took over, Pearl was our tutor. She tutored the PG DIP, and so each and every year, so we do a curriculum review, and each and every year, students always work, also get feedback, okay, how did the tutor fare and everything. And students have always expressed how she brought a balance with her academic support, the rigor, facilitation, but most especially the warmth which she brought to the process. It made them feel a deeper sense of belonging. Okay. She was also part of our former research institute, including disability in education in Africa, research unit idea. And so whenever I think of Pearl, the thing that comes to mind is because of the strong expression students give about how she related to them, is Maya Angelou's quote, which stated that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Yeah. So that is what I remember about, and in many ways also Chantal. The way they relate, the way we've worked together, and the way they've worked with students left an imprint of students that they carry on, So I won't be surprised if in future, one way or another, somewhere in future, one of them sees Pearl or Chantal, they will scream and people will think, this is a family member, not knowing, no, it's somebody that's just this somebody that taught them, and to me, that's when you see an educator who goes beyond, just the instruction, but brings care and warmth to the process. It's just very important. Yeah. So, Pearl and Chantal, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you, EK.
Thanks, EK.
All right, people, now it's time for you guys to introduce yourselves to Pearl and Chantal, okay? So please, each person, just say your name, 3 things: your name, where you're connecting from, what you do, okay? Your name, where you're connecting from, and then what you do. So anybody can start. We have time today. Anybody can start. And when you finish, you call the next person that will introduce themselves. And please turn on your camera so that Pearl and Chantal can see, put a face to the name. Who wants to begin? Don't I will call someone. Okay, Ilam. Ilam, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ilam Tafara. Today I am connecting from Cape Town, and I am the disability practitioner at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Thank you.
Okay, so choose the next person to go, Ilam. So she's at NS.
Alice.
Okay, Alice, you're up.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
We
Unfortunately,
can't see you.
I can't switch on my camera because I'm still in the office and everything. But
Okay.
my name is
But at
Alice,
least
and
we can see your picture there. Okay.
yeah, that's sufficient. I am connecting
Please, not.
from Cape Town, and I'm an intern at a PRO Recycling. I work in the enterprise development department. Yes. And then I'll
Okay.
choose Masabata since your camera is already on and she's ready.
Okay. Thank you. Is it better?
Thanks, Alice. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chantal, and good afternoon, Pearl. My name is Masabata. Surname is Daole. I am connecting from Bloemfontein, and I work for the National Development Agency. Thank you.
Thank you. So choose the next person.
Oh, Cedric, he is ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Cedric Williams. I work in the UCT Disability Service. Pearl is familiar with me. This used to be Pearl's job. So I'm connecting from Struisveld today. Yeah, we on vacation.
Oh,
So
wow.
Yeah, it was
Tell
my
us.
anniversary. My anniversary yesterday, so we went away for the week. Yeah. So yeah, that's
Oh,
me.
happy anniversary.
Did I leave anything out now?
No, what you do, you've said it already. Happy anniversary to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, Cedric.
Thank you.
And I'm jealous. You're the second person now that's making me jealous. You and Chantal.
Okay,
Okay.
Mbali.
Okay. Bali.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mbali Lamini. I'm connecting from Pumalanga. I work at Pumalanga University in the student housing department. Thank you.
Yeah. You remember choose the next person?
Next, Afikide is in.
Who did you call?
Afikide.
Hi,
Fikile,
sir.
okay.
So before I let go, can I just go quickly? I've got a chance to say hi to everyone.
Mandisa.
Yes.
Is that Mandisa?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Mandisa Ndebele. I'm connecting from Cape Town. I work at Bishop's College in the music department. Thank you.
Okay. Afikile? Remember turn on your camera?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I won't be able to do so. I'm not in an environment where I can turn on my camera. My apologies. My name is Afikile Nokai.
You're in your bedroom and you don't want to see you. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, name is Afikile Nokaya, and what do I do? I'm a coordinator for rehabilitation career cards collaborative program. I am also a personal assistant for Healthy Future Self-Employment for Disability Practitioners Project. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Who else should I choose? In this one, okay, Hello Bohile,
Yeah.
if I'm able
has not
to connect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rebuhile?
Muted. Rebuhile is muted. Perhaps you must unmute yourself.
Can we use sign language?
I
Sign
think
language, I
Hello
thought it's-
Bohile said he's renewing his passport, so he might not be able to engage. So that's the reason he's not responding. And I can't see anyone hasn't gone.
Oh, I see.
Isn't introduced.
Okay. Okay, I'll just put in the chat for him to just introduce himself in the chat once he's back. Okay, great. I think that's everyone. Is there anybody we're missing? I think that's everybody. And of course, we have our sign language interpreters in the room. Today is just Mama How. Normally, we also have Hello and also Michelle, but Michelle has not been in for a while. Yeah. All right. So people. So we, as you know, we went through the rights of children with profound, severe to profound intellectual disability. We went through the videos of the very controversial singer, his views, and how that contrasts to Kite's views. Okay, and Judy then tried to highlight how different ways in which rights are viewed. Okay, different ways in which rights are viewed, but also how policy really affects and impacts on the implementation of rights. When she talked about that court case in the Western Cape, and if you remember, that court case did not really accord full rights to the learners because it was just about in residential, centers, and the rest of it. So today, it's for you. It's your opportunity now to now pose questions to either Chantal. And then, of course, we talked about caregivers for children with severe to profound intellectual disability in special care homes that Pearl really covered with her master's presentation. So the floor is now open to all of you to now, ask your questions to either Pearl or Chantal. And please, when you ask the question, Pearl, Chantal, please feel free to weigh in. Even if a question is posed to somebody, please feel free to weigh in. So people, floor is open. We go first. Okay, Masabata, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ike. I am not sure who I'm posing this question to. Mine is related to the Cape Town, Western Cape court case. Okay, sorry, struggling with the earphones this side. My question is related to the Western Cape court case outcome. It has come to my attention now that the Department of Education in the Free State Province is currently implementing on the outcome. But in terms of how they implement, they would go to one of the disability centers and just identify learners in the center and say, we are taking these ones to school. Then my question would then be, do you think this is the correct way of doing it, or is just the department trying to meet the target in terms of learners who are at the mainstream school right now? One of the issues that the centers have identified with regard to this is that the Department of Education doesn't have an arrangement with regard to aftercare for the learners that they are taking from the centers. Remember, at the centers, they are there from morning until when the parents come back to school from work. So then I'm not sure whether this was also part of the arrangement that was catered for when the department taking these kids. It's just some confusion that I'm trying to understand with regard to this. And the last part is there are parents in the province, or maybe let me just say my colleague was engaging with me yesterday with regard to the experiences that he has with regard to his child. The child is able to function. He can do everything at home, can iron his clothes, he can be sent to the shop and all that. When he goes to school, he crosses the road on his own. But yet the doctor's report is saying the child does not have an ability to conduct any self-help methods. So there is some kind of a contradiction there. And it appeared that most of the learners which are placed at the special school in the Bloemfontein area, they are experiencing the same thing. So I'm just wondering in terms of how can this be addressed maybe as the DSE, and how can we assist the department maybe in terms of understanding when they refer children to the special schools. Because some of these kids, it's sort of, if the child has got a disruptive behavior, then automatically teachers are saying this child cannot cope in class. Then the child is sent to the special school. And some are being returned to the special schools, returned to the mainstream. So it's a lot of confusion that is happening around the issue of inclusion. I don't know if it's the issue that is happening in the province only, or maybe other provinces are experiencing this, the challenges, if I may call it that. Thank you.
Okay. Chantal or Pearl, you want to weigh in what she's talking about?
I think for me, it's first I need to understand what exactly it is that you're saying. You're saying that they are being removed from, I think you mentioned special care centers and then being moved to special schools,
Yeah.
and then also not being providing the necessary services that would be at the special care centers, right? And your question then is, how would one address that? Okay.
And also, I think you're interrogating the criteria or the method in which they are doing this, Masabata. You're not clear on that.
Yes, I'm also questioning the criteria as well, because it seems like the criteria is not working for both. Remember, I said these are the kids are sent to the special schools. When they get to the special schools, the special school will then be saying, this is not our candidate, and they are
Yes.
sent back to the
Yes.
mainstream. So I guess it's the question of criteria that is being used.
Paul, do you have anything to say?
I get your question, Masabata, and I get where you are coming from, but it's quite difficult. So the short answer would be for myself, yes, it's just to get the targets up where no proper research has been done on the children, and also not enough support has been put in place, which is a general issue for educating children with disabilities anyway, especially then when we look at the special care center going into special school, possibly going into mainstream. So there'll always be this debate whether is the government doing enough. And for myself, it will always be no, because I feel that the government can do more, because that's where all of the resources are. I mean, when we look at special care centers, most of them are run independently. They don't have enough resources. In some of them, there's absolutely no money. So when government needs to step in, yes, sometimes they do step in, but for all the wrong reasons. In this case, we are chasing targets. However, we're not remedying what the issue is. One, when we are taking the children where they need to go, get educated where they need to be educated. When they get there, be educated by specialized educators. Once they are there, then get the proper service that they need. For instance, now we speak to the issue of when they are in special care centers, then they are there from morning to noon. What then happens to them at 1 p.m. when the teachers need to go to school? So yes, maybe the government is trying to remedy something, but as I stand here, I'm not too sure what it is that they're trying to remedy. So there are many areas that they will need to look at, Masabata, before just taking a child from here to there without any proper research and without looking at the child individually, and not just using a blanket approach that, okay, we're taking these 5 children because they can all cross the road. We're taking them now to a special school. So I'd like to read more on what is transpiring in that province to understand, and also maybe like have a comparative study in my head where what would work best for the province, and then what would work best for the children. Chantal, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I think all I need to add to that, Masabata, is that implementation across the board is an issue. I think we've got all the correct policies. I think we've got eagerness on the part of educate some, special care centers and those in special schools. There's a willingness in some instances to move forward, but I think that we're ill prepared for the transformation that we're expecting. And we've seen that for years in all the literature, that we aren't properly equipped to do what we're trying to do. And until we do that, until we take it seriously, transformation seriously, and look at policy versus practice and the gaps, we aren't going to be able to address these issues adequately. I I think that in regards to something else that you mentioned about doctors, I think that you're saying that these learners aren't able to do certain things while the parents are saying and remember, we measure things in different ways, right? They would have their own measurement in regards to what self-help looks like, right? The medical practitioner, whereas with parents, and I mean, this is why the emphasis for me is always on engaging with the caregiver and the parent, because that is the person, those are the people who are actually aware of the capabilities of that particular child and what is working. So even in an instance where that child would be able to, or that learner would be able to, who wouldn't be able to do certain things in a particular scenario, there's a reason why they're able to do it in a different scenario. What sort of supports are available to them? What is happening within that environment, and why is it that the child is either measured according to different criteria or able to do particular tasks within a different environment, right? So for me, that's the question around that particular issue that you're mentioning. I don't know, I hope that's adequately answered your question. Okay.
Thanks, Chantal and Pearl. Another person, maybe, I hope both of you don't mind if I add here and there as we
Yes.
as we go on, just bringing the students back to what the week is about. And because what you said, Chantal, about the question Masabata asked about the doctor, and how they're doing their measurements. Masabata, if you remember, as we went through the Tuesday videos, we talked about this DSM-5 and how it looks at those three domains, which is used to be able to, it moves away. In fact, it moves away from. It focuses on the functional aspect. So what can the learner do and what can they not do? It doesn't look at it, from an IQ perspective. So that's one thing to be careful about. Because we still have a high prevalence of medical view deficit way of looking at learners with disabilities. So that is, they have this impairment, so because of that, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this. Not about, okay, yes, they have this impairment, but what are their strengths? And if you remember, when we went through the I can't remember the name now. We went through the assessment criteria from Berenice that Berenice introduced us to. It focuses on a strengths-based approach. So you don't start with, what can, they can't do this, they can't do this. That's a deficit way of viewing things. You start from, okay, what is it that they can, activities of daily living. You just said it. You noted a couple of activities of daily living that the learner can do. You said something around he can, is he bathe himself and he can do this,
Yes.
can do that.
Yes.
Those are the things. And if you remember, on Tuesday we talked about looking at it. Okay, what are they able to do conceptually? Note that.
Yes.
What are they able to do socially? In social environments, and then what are they able to do practically? So that's what Chantal and Pearl. If those things, and that's what Chantal. If those things are not factored in, we keep going. No matter how full our policies are, we will still be fine. We will still be finding that the inclusion is partial, and sometimes not existent. A lot of times not existent, honestly, because from Pearl's lecture, you already saw that it was not an inclusion focusing on the compulsory education which all children must have. Government has not pushed for the compulsory. All children, they have to go to school. When it comes to children with severe to profound disabilities, oh no, they can go to care centers, oh no, and things like that. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. You want to add more, Ms. Butter? Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Gige, I think you just said it on your last statement, what I wanted to add. Remember on Tuesday when we were talking about the levels, one of the observations that I made was that before I knew about the levels, I think that is what I was doing as well in terms of thinking that as long as it's intellectual disability, then it's just one category. So this question rises from that knowledge now of the 4 levels.
Yeah.
So you can imagine a government official who doesn't know, who doesn't know those levels. He will just say, no, all of them, they're all the same. Let's put everybody, this is need. That's what needs to be done. Okay. Next question. Alice, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is just out of interest to Pearl. Your research, I think it's using I don't know how to pronounce the name, but it's Bronfenbrenner's ecological,
yes.
exactly, ecological model to place, it places the child and caregiver in the same circle. So now my question, it's coming from, I think there's just reading that we did probably in our first week from Broderick and Lavin perspective. Like there's this risk of reproducing an adult-centric, deficient-based knowledge logic, because basically we are saying the caregiver knows the child more. But then I'm like, doesn't that logic historically exclude the child with the intellectual disability from decision makings about their own education? Yeah, so that's question 1. Like, doesn't that risk risk the exclusion of the child in certain decision makings? And then the second question is, how did you guide that risk against your own analysis? And then the third question is, your database, your data set, it's entirely based on caregivers. But then in disability studies, emancipatory research, we emphasize that the disabled person's voice is more important and we should use it wherever possible. So, like, even indirectly through observation or nonverbal communication. So, what was your ethical reasoning for not attempting any form of child-centered data collection? I hope that makes sense.
It does. It was tricky for me because I really didn't want to exclude the child. So most of my children, they are nonverbal. So they spend the majority of their time with their caregivers. So I had to be clever, not clever per se, but I had to use the caregiver as the voice of the child. Of course, the caregiver will not know what the child is going through, but when it comes to their education and understanding them, because remember, they spend most of the time with them and getting to know them and what their abilities are. When it comes to an educational perspective, the caregivers were the best person for me. If I were to look at maybe other aspects of the child, it would have been difficult for me to look holistically or just to look at only the perspective of the caregiver. But because remember, I wanted to get their experiences when it comes to the child. And when I put them both in the circle, I didn't want to come to a point where I will ethically, as we put it, not have the voice of the one, but have the voice of the other. I went through serious, almost issues with my supervisor with this, but at the end, the results produce what we were ideally experiencing in 3 of my care centers. I hope that that answers part of your question.
You know, it does. It does. I'm still trying to piece back my thoughts about the whole
About
child plus
emancipation, yes.
about the child plus the caregiver in one circle, but it's okay.
It was difficult even while doing it. I did encounter a few issues because I didn't want um to look only at the caregiver, and in some instances it did happen like that. Hence I had to have both of them in the same circle so that when I was encountering issues, it was easy for me to move from the one to the other without moving outside of my circle. Then let's say from the meso system to move into a macro or another system. So for me it was almost like a linear approach without discriminating one from the other. And also, I think my overarching research question assisted me with this when I was struggling a bit, because I think my main question was access to quality education. I'll just get to the actual question, which made me then realize that, okay, I actually need to have both of them in the same center. So I wanted to experience the support of support staff at special care centers in an inclusive education system. Remember, they are providing the education to the child. So for me, it made sense to have both of them in the same circle.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Chantal, anything you want to add?
Would you like to add, Ike? You look eager to add.
Stop reading faces. So that's something you have to know about Chantal. She's very good at reading faces. No, but I invited both of. Okay. No, I just wanted to. Alice, that's a very good question, and I like the way Pearl answered it and our reasoning for doing that, because I see where you're going to. You're trying to thread the delicate thread of maintaining nothing about us without us. In
Yes.
that the voices of learners with intellectual disability should always be foremost.
Yes.
But remember, when we talk about severe to profound, remember when we're talking about the categories, we talked about mild, we talked about moderate. Mild, moderate, we talked about that there are many ways in which they can still support themselves. They still need assistance, but when you come to severe to profound, they need assistance almost all the time.
All the time, yes.
So, yeah, almost all the time. So the children are ones whereby, if you remember, when we're arguing about Senga and to be a human being, Senga saying that is someone who can make choices and things like that. Judy made it very clear. Well, he's looking at a very linear way of making choice. People can make choices with support. People can make choices with support.
Yes.
So those learners can make choices through their carers. Okay. But what you're saying, Alice, is true. We still have to be very careful. The carer has to be very careful that they, in the final end, they are not projecting their own views
Yes.
as but they are projecting the views of the learner. So you're very, very right. But as per se, our study was on the carers, and if you remember, we said we need to start looking at caring for the carer. So as much as because if we don't care for the carer, the quality of the care will compromise. Yeah. So I hope that adds, Alice, to understanding that Pearl provided.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Thank you so much, Dr. Ike.
Okay. Okay, next person. Everybody must ask questions today. So if you don't ask, I will call you.
Can I just add
Yeah.
to what the
Yes.
discussion again, please?
Yes,
Ike?
please.
If you, Alice, and well done on that assignment that you did on recycling right at the beginning of the year. It was really good, and so was, nice assignment. I really enjoyed reading it.
You're putting me on the spot, so now Dr. Ike wants to read it as well.
No, it's a nice. I really liked the assignment, but and Ike, you should read it.
I will now. Yeah.
So if you think of what Judy spoke about in the video, and she speaks about, and they make a point, I think Itay says it as well, they make a point about these learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. There's a lifelong dependency. We have to accept that, right? Then when it comes to human rights, there's that conversation or debate about what does it mean to be human? And if you aren't able to make those decisions, or, you know, the legal decisions, if you don't have an understanding of law, you don't know law, and you don't have sort of like a free will around law, does that mean that you aren't human and you don't have the rights that humans are entitled to? Now, if you think of from that perspective, think of this without, and that's accepted, without having some sort of supported decision making happening there, they wouldn't be able to access their rights. So while I completely agree with you in regards to making sure that the voice is of the person with a disability is always there, when we look at learners or persons with severe to profound intellectual disabilities, as both Pearl and Ike has alluded to, it's really important to understand capacity and how to ensure they're able to access those rights that they're entitled to. And those rights are usually accessed through support. Just something that I thought needed, we should just add to that as well.
Thanks, Chantal. Definitely. I like the mentioning of capacity, because that's very, very important. And capacity depends on, you know, access. A lot of ways in access, what you have access to. Yeah. All right, who is going next? Let me see who is on next on the list. Afikile. You will say, oh, why is my name start? You know, because once your name starts with A, it's always one of the first people that will be called. Afikile, what's your question or comment for Pearl or Chantal or both?
I don't have any question yet. Thank you.
You were supposed to come with questions. Discuss that on Tuesday. Okay, Cedric?
I don't have any question today. Sorry, Klaus.
Okay, I'm getting to know the students now that, you know, work on content after we finish on the Tuesday.
Can I just say something else to Cedric? Because I feel like I'm using this space to say things like, I liked as well that you focused on Mitchell's Plain in your assignment, because I think that those sorts of things are really important. We often look at other, you know, outside of our own communities, but the fact that you focused on your community and you highlighted that community, I thought was very interesting, because the context is very different. You know, we can look at different contexts, and we can, the contexts are all so different. So when we bring an awareness to the various contexts, we're looking at the very specific issues in those areas, which you'll find are very different to other contexts. So I like that you focused on that. Sorry, Ike, man, I'm remembering, as I'm looking at the notes, I'm remembering all the assignments.
No problem, Chantal.
Thank you, Chantal.
Not a problem. Okay, I actually have, there are one or two questions which I actually would like us to discuss. Let me see. How did I write it?
Mbali has a question in the chat.
Oh, is it? Okay. Mbali, don't want me to call you. Okay, Mbali says, who provides support to parents of children with intellectual disabilities, particularly mothers in rural areas who face patriarchal oppression, often unfairly blamed for giving birth to disabled children?
Yeah. That's the issue of caring for the carer, Ike, that you mentioned earlier on, which is always an issue. I think in my study as well, that came out very strongly that, I know research shows that we don't have the amount of time that goes into the time that the carers actually spend caring for their children. So it's quite difficult. And also, Mbali, I think if I were to do any further study, that would be exactly the study that I would want to look at, caring for the carer, because it holds so much. It holds so much. Yeah, but I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer, unfortunately. I can tell you what research says, but even in my study, I didn't get a sense of who's caring for the carer. Remember, for myself, I didn't I didn't look at the carers at all per se in a parent perspective, but my study was during COVID, so I did visit one or two homes where I did meet the parents, and they did highlight how difficult it is for themselves having to look after a child with for my case, severe to profound intellectual disabilities, and they always rely on family and others. But I don't really know whether there is a place where they could go to, someone that is designated where they can fall back to seek that support. So I think the question still stands then: who cares for the carer, and how is it that they can be supported? So it's a very interesting study that I'd really like to embark on. I think that's one finding I didn't know would come from my study. I didn't write about that finding, but holistically, when I spoke, when I came to all my data, that was the one that was almost consistent throughout, is that there's an issue with caring for the carer.
Ike, is the question, who cares for the carer?
Support.
Who supports the parents of children with intellectual disabilities in rural areas? Where there's predominant patriarchal oppression. So
and also the stigma of giving birth to a child with disability.
Women are the major caring, the one who fulfill the caring role major. So that's why the patriarchal aspect is coming in. Before you go on, Mbali, that's your master's study. Go on.
Yes. It would be lovely.
I like that. I would love Mbali, don't let them trap you into things. That's how I got my master's. I was trapped.
Please do it, Mbali.
It would be because this has been bothering me ever since we started this, because I always refer back to rural areas on the things that I've been seeing growing up. And I've been seeing a woman called all sorts of names just because she gave birth to a child who's disabled in whatever way, with whatever disability that the child has. And also, in rural areas, women, they never get to find out these things because they don't get the necessary tests done on them due to healthcare being far away or whatever the case may be. And also, there will always be the ones that are blamed. They are the ones who are blamed by the society, by the men in the house, by everyone. And also, they're still the same people who are supposed to take care of this person. And mind you, being a parent, it's something that you learn along the way.
Yes.
But now it gets more difficult now that you have to parent a child with a special needs, you see. So they do need some kind of support, but I've never seen that support. I've always tried to look at it. What do social workers do actually? They just deal with social issues, those minor issues, but no one ever goes to say, you know what, then we know that you have a child with this disability. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to parent your child. They just go along the way, do whatever they need to do. And us, we watching that, we're looking and say, this one is not doing a good job. But who are we to say this person is not doing a good job? What is the good job that is supposed to be done? Those are the questions that I mainly have. And I've never seen, okay, there are special schools, there are care centers for people with disabilities, but that the mind of the parent who's taking care of that, emotional. Who's
Yeah.
taking care of that? Maybe that's why we find in the rural areas, many of them, they become drunkards.
Yes.
They become drunkards, they get sick easily and things like that. It could be stress, it could be whatever, but it's something that needs to be researched and discussed further, I think. Thank you.
Vicky, can I just speak about my study quickly, my
Yeah,
master's
please.
study?
Yes, Chantal, by all means, please.
So my master's was on online professional development of caregivers of learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. And there was a lot of interesting things that came out about the professional development. But one of the things that did come through in the results or the findings was that my question to your question would be, what type of support are we talking about and who is responsible for that support? And when we spoke about, when I looked at my study and I did it, I analyzed it through an ethics of care. So you look at attentiveness, responsibility, competency, and then responsiveness, right? And the area around responsibility is I'm speaking from that perspective, right? When we look at the type of support that parents or caregivers of learners with severe, and we're talking primary caregivers, with type of support that they require, they usually looked to the caregivers at the special care centers for the support. When it came to, and that would be your emotional support and that sort of thing, they looked to their communities as well for emotional support. But in regards to other types of support and where the responsibility lies is, are we talking about resources? Are we talking about financial support? And I hear what you're saying. You're talking about sort of like respite care or mental well-being and that sort of thing. But it depends on what type of support we're talking about. And so we would have to either look to government for particular support, we look to communities for particular support, we look to family for other types of support, but we looked at caregivers. I mean, this is what came through in my study, is that family was always looking to caregivers at the special care centers for that sort of support, the emotional support, because they needed somebody who could relate to what they were going through and understood what it meant to raise a child or a learner with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. So that's just a little bit of what came out in my study in regards to various types of support and specifically sort of well-being.
Thanks,
I don't know
Chantal.
if that's helpful at all.
Barely hope that.
No, yes, it is very much helpful. Yes, it is. It is.
Okay. So thanks very much, Chantal. I mean, I want to just add a little bit also to what you said. What you said really high, because there's usually a high degree of isolation in those cases. I mean, we were talking about the stigma, but you're highlighting it a lot. So in the rural areas, there's a lot of beliefs that are available, that are prevalent and everything. So it causes a high degree of isolation that Chantal was talking about. So the level of support and what kind of support is important, because, and that emotional one is huge, because if you don't have someone who understands what you're going through, then the drinking starts, just like you're saying. The drinking starts, and every other thing starts, because you emotionally you cannot even hold things together. You don't know what to do. You don't know the future for this child, and then the very sad thought might start creeping in. Do I abandon the child, or do I, those kind of things. So it's what Chantal is saying is very, very important to and. I mean, I don't know how far CIAS, I was thinking about screening, identification.
I was looking at that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much, I don't know how much CIAS goes further, especially in rural areas. I don't know how much that happens yet. But what I want to say, Mbali, when you guys go to the last course, Monitoring Disability in Society, they will introduce you to community-based rehabilitation. Now, this is where you will see rehabilitation care workers. They try to go into rural areas and they try to do basic screening and they try to refer. But even that just like Chantal was saying and Pearl was saying, even that implementation is poor. First of all, so part of the graduate course I'm teaching and convening, we try to train home-based carers. And even that will get, so that's what, I remember Judy talked about it, where she said the carers should be supported and everything and recognized professionally and things like that. We're still struggling to get these professionals recognized, So, and for me, sorry, Pearl and I've told them, for me, this is my own personal view. For me, since I've been working with disability, the biggest challenge I've seen time and again, there are other big challenges, but the one I've seen, which sometimes morphs into the other ones, has always been attitudinal
Yes.
challenge towards disability. Because even sometimes, even when I see resources lacking, when I start probing the reason why there are no resources, going deeper, when I clock to the individuals who are responsible, I will see that is their attitude towards disability that makes them devalue the value that of resources and things like that. So because Western Cape Health Department told us they have 2030 goal. We say, hey, we're happy. We're going to be part of it. We need to get community, but whoa, we're happy. We now start training community development workers. And then you don't want to, first of all, jobs for them to be able to do. And second of all, for them to join the professional body. So your HPCSA and the rest of it. So you can see, so you now start probing, okay, you have the mandate, but the solution is there. Why are you not supporting it? Why are you not supporting it? And that affects the level of support which Chantal and Pearl were talking about, that is given to the parents, the parents of these learners in rural areas. So very, 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 very important. And CS helps us to also identify the level of support that is needed that Chantal was speaking about. Yeah. Okay, Sibonelo, go ahead.
Good day. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you so much.
So, go ahead. Let me not.
Okay. Thank you so much. Speaking about supports, Chantal, I'm also thinking deep about this, especially on people with disabilities, those who have the severe intellectual disability. Make an example with kids with Down syndrome. The Down syndrome, it's totally, it's got stages or phases, we can put it like that, or types, because there are Down syndromes whereby some kids out there with Down syndromes are capable to go to school and study and stuff like that. But there are kids with Down syndrome that is really, 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 really requires a parent's care.
Yeah.
That's even the educators as well, or the caregivers or the caretakers, they can't cope with, in such a way that reflecting to my own personal reflection at work. I do consult with youth with disabilities to assist them on how they can grasp and obtain opportunities within the government sectors. So sometimes I consult with parents who come with these kids and they've grown up. And when they come to me, these kids, they never went to school. And some of them, they come from rural areas. Some of them, they come from urban areas. Some of them are privileged. Some of them, they come from disadvantaged backgrounds. And regarding the supports, they do have supports, hence their parents are trying all their best to assist them on how they can get opportunities. But sometimes I get stressed because you can just see with your naked eyes, with trying all the best to help that person to see that, hey, this person with this condition, he or she never went to school, and the condition is severe in such a way that some of them, they even scream, make noise, they can't cope, they even like to play with dangerous things, and their parents would hit them in front of me, and I got stressed, and I asked myself, how could the education system can be someday maybe be able to assist these parents, because they are stressed, like how Mbali was saying, they are stressed in such a way that even schools, they reject them. Schools that accommodate students with intellectual disabilities, they reject them due to their condition. So now, in this case, in terms of supporting and responsibility, who is responsible to make sure that these individuals with these severe disabilities are also must be accommodated in education? Who must be responsible for this? Thank you.
I imagine that question is posed to me because I heard my name there. So look, ultimately, it would be, in my view, right? It would be government that would be responsible to ensure that learners are educated, right? Having said that though, we know it doesn't work that way. We're already in a situation where DBE is not, Department of Education is not taking responsibility for learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. We're in a situation where the rights are against them already. You know, that's like at the core of it. They assume to be ineducable and they shouldn't actually have those rights and all of those things. So government aside, then we go further down for me and we start looking at agency. Agency then. So for me, once I think, and if you'll just like allow me to use an example. I did an interview, I think in 2018. It was one of our assignments actually for our postgraduate diploma in disability studies. And I did an interview with somebody, and the realization that parents have no idea what their children are entitled to became quite apparent on that day. And I'm talking family member here. I'm not talking a distant stranger. She had no idea that a child was entitled to be at a particular school, getting a particular education. So I think that, you know, there's some agency. I mean, I had a conversation with a colleague the other day. We spoke about parents and communities and what we're supposed to do as communities to ensure. So it sits with government, but it also sits with us, you know, to take responsibility for those things so that these learners are educated. And I think that we all, you know, I work very closely with a special care center. And even there, I see that they don't understand where to go to for their caregivers to have a particular level of education and understand how to see to the needs of those learners. So we're talking about a huge gap in awareness and education here. And that huge gap then filters down through to our children, our learners, right? Because government doesn't understand these needs, but they imagine they do. And even if they did, it wouldn't be a priority because learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities are not valued because they're not productive citizens, etc., and so on. And that is why caregivers aren't valued either, because they only caring for learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities, you know. So and it also speaks to the value where what our society values, you know. So now you go from government and then you go to parents and you go to caregivers who don't have access, who don't understand what's available, who don't know about rights and things like that. So yes, there's agency and yes, there's responsibility, but you know, this is the situation that we find ourselves in, is that ultimately there's not enough value placed on learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities to be able to prioritize their education. And so because of that, it's not going to be taken seriously, you know, unless obviously there's some huge transformation and we start kicking up against all types of education. But anyway, that's just my view. I don't know if I've even made sense, because there's so many things on my mind in regards to education and learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities, and who's responsible, and how to create awareness, and how do we address these issues, that I hope you can make some sense of what I just said.
Yeah, it does make sense, and it does make sense. And speaking about agencies, we do refer them to agencies as well, into some organizations where they can be assisted. But last year, it was my first time experiencing one of the organization whereby a learner with an intellectual disability, they wanted him to write an assessment before they help him. So now I asked the social worker there to say, why do you want him to write an assessment? Because this is a condition. And then she told me that, but this is the way, or to check on how we can support this individual. I was so disappointed. It's in such a way that I saw a huge gap to say some of the agencies and the organization out there, you don't understand if these organization or agencies, they went to study the disability studies, or are they knowledgeable or trained. And I do come across with some of them in conferences whereby they are learning regarding disability awarenesses, but to get deeper core in such a way, that's how you need to understand the disability inclusion perspective. Some of them, I feel like they don't go to school and study. They only study the social work parts, and then of which it gives them that authority, if I can put it that way, to assist. But to deeper concepts of understanding the disability, I doubt.
Yeah.
And also, you must remember, Sibonela, in some of these instances, for example, when it comes to special care centers, most of them are started by parents. So they don't really have the background. They weren't educated themselves. They didn't have any specialized training. So I don't want to say it's trial and error, but actually it is trial and error in some instances where they're figuring things as they go along, because this is the only solution for them, because the people that thought would be there for them, which is the government, are not there. What do they then do? Do they just sit and do nothing? No, they won't. They'll then take matters into their own hands, and hoping that at some point someone will come out and assist them. At some point the government will recognize them, that, oh, actually here is an agency that we could assist them, but they making means with what they have. So we must not forget that most of these agencies / care centers are started by people who had absolutely nothing themselves.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pearl and Chantel. Let me just check with Alice if his question is a new question or is with this one. If it's a new question, I'll put in my comment. Alice, I saw your hand up. Is it a new question, or you want to respond to the current question?
So I wasn't responding, but I think I was actually trying to pose another question, but I think along the way it got answered, because I was trying to, like, I was thinking of how we could conceptualize the lack of awareness that there is in terms of people with with intellectual disabilities. So in my head was, are we now trying to, are we supposed to primarily reduce the stigma that's already there, and or are we supposed to, like, reshape the societal understandings of people with intellectual disabilities? And then in the process of us creating those or initiating those awareness, how are we going to avoid producing deficient-based narratives while still mobilizing some awareness?
So if I may come in there, spreading the awareness doesn't mean everything is now fixed in terms of people's no, but it's a step in the right direction. A step in the right direction. you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked with the level, not only lack of awareness, but the level of resistance against awareness. When I'm called to come and do training, so I'm going to do training on accessibility, I tell the people, I want to start off first with context of disability. They look at me. I say, no, I'm not going to do this training until you get a little bit of understanding on what disability is about. Because what will happen is that if people don't get that awareness, they go into symbolic inclusion, tick box inclusion. Just like Masabata was saying, that the government comes, they just want to do it to fill a quota. That's what inclusion becomes. Once people don't understand the context. So I tell them, if you don't want me to do the context, then I'm not doing the training. You have to know the context of disability so that when I leave, the inclusion does not stop. You continue with it because you understand. So that's why what Chantal says is actually, for me, is actually the answer. The problem lies with not valuing. How do we get society to value the lives of children with intellectual disability? Because once what you value, you won't diminish. You will care for. It's like saying that, it's like when you go to any of those people and you tell them, do you value your children? They will do anything for their children. They will send that, they will get money for their children to go to school because they value their children. So what do we do to get society to value the lives of children with severe to profound intellectual disability? Once that, of course, we won't stick only to that. We'll keep working on the other ones, but that's a major area. Once you start getting that area, you start seeing that people will start responding. So a typical example is that my background and a lot of people, my background is information technology. I not come from a background of disability. No, it's information technology. But I've gotten to the stage where that, mind shift has happened from deficit to, asset, valuing the lives of everybody, especially persons with disabilities. And once that happens, you don't need someone to come to my back and start capping me. Oh no, you start living it. So to me, the answer to your question is what Chantal was trying to say. That's the beginning. It's not the only part, but it's the core aspect, valuing the lives of, because you can see that's why government does not, just like she was saying, does not provide the resources, does not say education for all, including children with severe to profound intellectual disability. But when they say education for all, somehow those children are not part of all. So I wanted to add that. Okay. Is there any other areas people? Okay. Then let me just. We have about. Okay, Alice has to go. Alice, go ahead. Let me not talk too much. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question now, it's linked to disability and spirituality. So I think this question is probably for Pearl to answer. Like when she was doing the research, did she observe any spirituality or community values that was influencing how caregivers framed the dignity and personhood for children with severe to profound intellectual disability? And given those the frameworks that we have, were they complementing the rights-based approaches to inclusive education?
For mine, it didn't look at spirituality per se, but I did hear you adding the community aspect. So I think for my caregivers, that was very important. One of the homes that I visited, a child there was going through what I think Masabata Nombali mentioned of the oppression and the isolation. So this parent has to go to work and has to leave the child behind with nobody, locks the child in the house because the community doesn't understand. It goes back to that understanding about disability now. The community doesn't understand how to sort of assist or look out for that child. But the issue of disability and spirituality did come to my mind then, what do the pastors around think about this? I mean, it's sort of almost like, I don't want to say the slavery era, but it's sort of, it goes back to that way we put people in isolation. How does it then tie in? What are my caregivers saying when it comes to um, just the spirituality that is aligned with the child, just the community-based aspect when it comes to the children? So I really, Alice, I didn't look at spirituality, but the community part, it really stuck with me. Our communities, although we like to believe that we are in a privileged area, I mean, I live Kualanga, Cape Town. I would like to believe that my society knows about this, but when I experienced that with that child, it was quite clear to me that we still have a long way. We still have a long way when it comes to community and disability. We still have a long way when it comes to disability and spirituality. I'm not too sure yet how we would work those together. I know Nafisa did her study, but in my context, no, I still don't see it coming together. It didn't come together for me. Yeah.
Alice?
I hope
Okay.
I've got you.
Yeah, no, you did, because it took me back to my undergrad when I was doing psychology. Like we had a module on intellectual disabilities, and it wasn't, when we did it that time, it wasn't about the society not being aware of intellectual disabilities, but then it was about the stigma that falls within having a child with intellectual disability, and that whole thought of, if your child has an intellectual disability or a disability in general, then you as a family have wronged the ancestors to some degree and everything. So yeah, no, that's where my question was just coming from. And because it's also a thing of like, um because the whole research is based on the caregiver. So to some extent, the caregiver's spirituality is spiritual. I don't know what's the word, but like spiritual views and community views end up being imposed on the child. Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. I didn't get that sense quite with mine, where it got imposed, but I do know that it's almost for the two ladies here in Langa. I think their values didn't impose, but it's what they used it as. I won't say as their theoretical framework because it's not, but I think they used it as their base of working. Because remember, also, they didn't have any resources during that time. Whatever they did was out of community for them. So they could have just said, oh no, we don't have the resources, and stayed at home. But I think their own values then took over to say, you know what, we almost not entitled or indebted to these children, but we need to do something for them, because I mean now they're isolated, they are at home, so their values did come in for the children, but I didn't get the sense that they were almost imposing on what the children or the parents of the children would like them to do.
Okay. Thank you. And then also, just out of interest as well, you say the lady that you interviewed about the child having to be locked because the community didn't understand. Uh, this one is the question is not directed to you. It's just out of interest sake, like what would be the psychological effects of that child being isolated from the outside world as a whole, and doesn't that also affect the doesn't that also contribute more to how the child is going, like contribute more to the intellectual disability that they already have, because they're not being exposed to the other side of the world.
Outside stimuli, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
and
true. That's
then
true.
I think it would then go back to that incidental learning of they don't have the visual learning of what's happening in the outside world.
And also
Alice,
remember,
yeah.
going to special care centers, going to special schools is actually about that, Alice, to get the constant stimulation. Because, you know, the moment you don't stimulate, I know there's an elderly woman, not even doesn't even have a severe to profound intellectual disability, not too old, in her 60s, but going slowly into dementia. I think it's too early for her. But I think the reason behind it is that she spends the entire day on her own. She doesn't have any constant communication with anyone, no stimulation. She sits there, she has a meds, watches TV, no interaction. So you can imagine what happens. I mean, that's a person that knows how to talk, speaks. You can imagine how then this affects to a child with severe to profound intellectual disability, who in most instances doesn't have is nonverbal, is just sitting there staring into the walls, not knowing what to do. It then causes other, psychological issues that maybe, that we don't know over and above the ones that they had. And also those social anxieties. I am almost scared to know what that child would go through if they were to be taken out of the house just for an afternoon in the park. Those screams would then come in. I think someone mentioned, as Bonelo mentioned about the screams. It's then we would experience those screams coming in, because now they're taken out of their comfort zone into an area that they don't know. And we would take for granted and that it's just a walk. But for them, it's something more than that. So that isolation will have more damage to the child than we even maybe more than the intellectual disability that they were going through. So taken to a psychologist, psychiatrist, maybe that child would then be diagnosed with issues over and above. So it's a thing. It's a thing that isolation really impacts on the child.
Ike, could I add to that?
Yes, go ahead.
So Alice, I think I would like to recommend Prof. Brian Watermer's work on the psychosocial issues related to disability. There's some really interesting studies and literature papers that he's written. So I would suggest you go and look up some of his work really to understand, look deeper into that. In regards to spirituality, I don't know if you saw the video that Marlene Leroux did with Prof. Judith McKenzie, and how she spoke about these pastors that came to her home and they kept on praying and they kept on praying. And she said, that's enough now. With all the praying, what I want for my child is acceptance, not healing, not being fixed. And then if you listen to something that happened to a church that I used to belong to, where they refuse to celebrate persons with disabilities because it's actually, we're celebrating something that is against God's will. So that was something that stood out for me. Just to let you know, I'm no longer with the church, but that is something that really stood out for me. And for me, what that is saying is that we're looking at, and you spoke about a rights-based approach, we're looking at a very medical model of disability when you are more interested in fixing, because it's either been a curse or it's been, it requires healing. So we're looking at a medical model rather than focusing on the acceptance. And it was so profound coming from Marlene Leroux when she said, all I want the prayers to stop, and I just want my child to be accepted. And then when you spoke about the isolation, Eliz Marie in the video as well with Taryn du Toit speaks about the importance of learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities being engaged. She speaks about bringing the community and inviting them into their space. She speaks about always starting at the beginning of the day and speaking about what is necessary for this child to be further engaged, So just to respond to what the questions that you were asking, there's this whole, I think, around spirituality, this issue around, which is a very medical model approach, like I mentioned, Elizabeth speaking about the importance of engagement and the isolation having these negative effect on the child, and obviously I think on the caregiver as well as the learner with severe to profound intellectual disability. But to go further into it, looking at Prof. Brian Watermeyer's his work on psychosocial issues and psychological effects of disability, and yeah, there's so many interesting people to speak to about. I mean, Benedict Letiani is also one of the people who always looks at, and they speak about, Zuleika also speaks about this internalized oppression and those sorts of things, what the impact of it, and you can, of having a disability and what that looks like out in the world, so yeah, that's just my little 2 cents over there.
I think it's more than 2 cents. Alice?
Yeah, it is okay. Thank you.
So-
Thank you.
So Alice, Chantal is pointing you, we did the psychology of oppression in first semester, if you remember, and disability as diversity. How the, how will I put it? How, English sometimes escapes me. Okay, let me just use able-bodied. How the able-bodied, so that means how the dominant groups makes the groups in the periphery feel as if the challenges they are going through is their fault. It is your the impairment you have, it's your fault. It's not really, there's nothing. And when you start hearing that over and over again, you start thinking, maybe it's actually my fault. That's when the oppression starts. The oppression starts that you start seeing, that no, nobody has anything to do. It's only me that is this, only me that is that. So very, very important, as Chantal was speaking about. But if you remember in first semester, we also talked about how we also respond to disability. So that's inside that response to disability because of you are afraid. Because and that's why I say, that's why I keep linking to attitude, because you find that if you interview those people and they're really honest about it, you find that the response in not wanting to either provide resources or wanting to get awareness and everything stems from something psychologically within, which sometimes we are not aware of. Maybe someone is thinking, oh my goodness, one day I can just have an accident and have, cognitive impairment. How will I? So Brian talks about it, and I say, that's where you now say, well, we have out of sight, out of mind. People do it unconsciously. So let's put the child in a special school, or let's put the child in a special care center. But really, it's because when they see that child, the child reminds them that, oh, I may get a disability. I may get a disability. So they don't want to think about it. So they keep the child away.
Yeah.
So these things, what Pearl and Chantal is talking, these things are linked. These things are linked.
Yeah.
When you look at it, you know that it stems from multiple levels, and then the man manifests consciously in terms of, oh, no, not providing resources. Oh, no, they're not full human beings. And that isolation part is very, very powerful, because, I mean, you can never compare it, but just think a little bit of how you felt isolated during the COVID period, when you couldn't do the things you wanted to do.
Yes.
When you couldn't do the things you love, the things you love to do, even going to the stores, going to see your friends. Now, this is 1,000 times exacerbated for learners with severe to profound intellectual disability. Pearl is talking about it. You sit all day, you're looking at the wall. I mean, what kind of life is that?
Yes.
It's not a life of dignity. Not the life of dignity. Yeah. So that's why it's very, very important for us to. There's no silver bullet in this one way to just say this is fixed. That's what Pearl and Chantal are hinting at. There are multiple layers, and we have to start trying to address those layers and not just look at it in one way here. Yeah. And sorry, one last thing I want to talk about. Brian, if you remember, guys, in the second week, Brian said something, Prof. Watermeyer said something very important. and Chantal is alluding to it also. He said, remember, Chantal said, talk about the internal the oppression, the internal oppression that is going on. Remember what that example Brian gave. Brian said there was a child with visual impairment in class, and the teacher was frustrated. Was frustrated because the child did not want to learn Braille. The child did not want to learn orientation and mobility. You know, the teacher was frustrated because it's helping other students. But Brian, remember Brian said, if we take our time to listen, feel, and think, you start saying that's not the main issue with that child at that time. It may be internalized oppression. At that time, he said the child is trying to negotiate his identity. Because he's become blind and he's saying himself, how do I see myself? And how do others see me now in the world today? That's what the child is saying. And if that is not addressed, if that is not addressed, you have a very case of internalized oppression, because the child will now start thinking to themselves that, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. You know, it's not worth it. And that is a child with visual impairment is much more challenging for children with severe to profound intellectual disability. So that's why the awareness, that's why this awareness we keep talking about doing the course is very important, because you get to know these different levels and you get to know the appropriate way to respond, you know, in those cases. Yeah. All right, let's go to, so people, we're supposed to take a break. So I'm thinking let's go as much as we can. We might not, I don't think we'll go up to 6 p.m. Go as much as we can and then we end earlier. I don't know if we agree with that, or do we want to take a break and come back? Okay, Cedric, thumbs up. Any other person, thumbs up. Okay, it's Bonello. All right. Because I think the conversation is just, you know, not to break it in the middle and then come back. Let's just continue. All right. So, Masabata, what you want to say, is it what you said in the chat, or do you want me to read what is in the chat first and then you come in?
Maybe not to break the conversation that is happening now, Dr. Ike.
Okay.
I can just
Okay.
come in quickly, because
go ahead.
since I've raised my hand, a lot has been said with regard to what I wanted to contribute. My hand was up when Alice was talking about religion and the caregivers. So I just wanted to come in and make an example of the issue that I mentioned the other time, to say I was at the center during the Mandela Day, where the Women's League came to pray for the children who are at the center. And now coming to what Alice was asking with regard to whether the caregivers believe, how does it impact in this? And Pearl was saying, remember, these people have established centers because of their values. But where I'm coming in is, even though they have developed, established the centers based on the belief, due to the fact that now they are struggling with resources, and somebody comes from church and come to with a prayer, they then get conflicted, because now they are dependent on the support that is coming with the prayer and the contributions that the church is giving. Then it affects the whole decision, and then how they should be taking in everything that is happening around them.
That's a huge
I
conflict.
love that. Yeah, it is.
And belief is very strong.
And it's
Belief is very
reality. That's the reality, especially in the NPOs, NGOs. I mean, that's the nature of where they get most of the donors and funding. They have to almost accept what it is that they get, you know, without even visiting their values. It's a lovely observation, Masabata.
I think it's also important, let's just be careful here, because I've started to feel like we looking at spirituality as a barrier, but it can also be a facilitator, right? And if you look at Prof. Teresa Lorenzo's work, where she speaks about how important the spiritual community was to those ladies, I think they had, I can't remember the study completely, but I know she did a study
Yes,
with
women with
women
yeah,
disabilities, but
disabilities,
and they spoke about the importance of their spiritual community.
spirituality. Yeah,
Yeah, so I think we must just be careful when it's starting to seem as though it's a barrier. It could be a facilitator too, you know. So yeah, so maybe just to mention that as well before we.
Thanks, Chantal, for bringing that. You know, and in many ways it is a facility, because for some persons with disabilities, that's actually what they fall back on,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they get the support in which they need, and and the rest of it. While other other aspects of society do not, are not accommodative. Yeah, very true, very true. Okay, let me read what Masabata said in the chat. I said, I had a conversation with a colleague yesterday. I could pick up that he doesn't know what the child is entitled to. He mentioned the department's refusal to place his child in school that he had identified, and he is so frustrated when he talks about his experience. The officials at DBE have blocked him from accessing any support from their offices, which I found to be really sad and unfair. I mean, what? I don't know. What do you say to that? It's like I always say, it's like you're employed for a job. This is what you're supposed to do, and then the thing you're supposed to do for the job comes up, and then you block the person. That's something I can't understand. That's something I can't understand. That's the reason you were employed. That is the reason you have a job. Yeah. In terms of government, that's where I don't know if I have a solution. The only thing I would say in terms of that, Masabata, is I don't know how far it has gone. I don't know. I know it has helped us to progress to where we are today, and I think people are still doing it a lot in the NGOs, and that's the you will learn more about it in MDIS in the next course. If you remember when we started the course, Judy went through the international policies and the South African policies, and then she talked about the shadow report. That's the civil society report that helps to monitor government implementation of the UNCRPD, Education White Paper 6, and the rest of it. That's an avenue for us to use to hold government accountable. But remember in the first week, the video we watched, the school in the Eastern Cape, it's not happening. Because if you remember, I don't know, Chantal, remember that school in the Eastern Cape with the children who were left on their own and the rest of it. Yeah. So, but that's one way to try and monitor and control if government is implementing. So it requires someone to really get a context of disability so that they don't need someone else chasing them, and get into legal ways to be able to, put the report together. So that's why these reports, like the one Left in the Dark for visual impairment that was done in 2015, those kind of reports are very important. Can I use that as evidence? Because evidence is very important. Use that as evidence to not say, oh, you say you're going to do this, but look at the implementation. It's not happening. Yeah. That's one way. It's not foolproof, but it's one way. Yeah. Sibonelo?
Yes, when it comes to government as well, it's one of the attitude that the employees have there in the government sectors, whereby if there are challenges, most of employers don't want to take responsibility, even if some of them are trained or not. They don't want to take responsibility. Like, for example, in government sectors, there are people out there that do jobs to accommodate or to assist individuals with disabilities. But if they are not available, the people that are supposed to also support when someone is not available to assist, usually the government employees will not support. They will say, come back for that officials, or come back on the next day when that officials has come back. But on the 3rd of December, That's why the government now try to make successful stories. They'll celebrate and commemorate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities there. And it only ends there on the 3rd of December. They only celebrate even the small things that they've done for people with disabilities. But now, this is also coming into a social model of disability to say that disability is not recognized every day. It's only recognized into certain scenarios, especially for commemorations and achievements. But when it comes to the challenges, in government sectors, they don't want to take the full responsibility, and they will wait for someone with a disability, someone maybe who's vocal, someone maybe who is an advocate, to stand and do something. But even the leadership and the management as well, they won't give full support for that advocates during the challenges or any matters that need to be challenged or give us solutions for persons with disabilities. They will leave out the group of disabilities to do that by their own. And it's one of the things that's within the government sector that we as people with disabilities, we are facing. And there are diversity, equity, inclusion, department, transformation department, but within those transformation department as well. When it comes to curriculum, if I can put it this way, most of people that are employed within those transformation sectors as well, majority of them, they do not have the disability studies. They only study for diversity, equity, and inclusion, of which is one of the things that we also have, I think, within the Department of Education, whereby the curriculum of disability studies in education, it's not really strong or part of it. It's only diversity and equity, whereby there must be the representation of races, genders, and people with disabilities, as well when it comes to equity, as well as monitoring the statistics to check how many people with disabilities within the Department of Education are there. But looking into a different concept, whereby within those children with disabilities, are they well examined due to the, I think it's SIS, the one that we studied last week. Those things, they are not really taken off. The only thing that we have within the curriculum is the statistics. But when it comes to the reasonable accommodation, to make sure that the kids within the Department of Education are really reasonably accommodated, the government is not looking to that because they are waiting for people with disabilities to come forward and do those studies. Thank you.
That's profound. Shanta, you want to add anything? Otherwise, I have one or two things.
No, you go ahead, Ike.
Okay,
Paul,
okay.
whoever.
Probably have anything, otherwise, yeah, go ahead. Because thanks. Okay, let me go ahead. So thanks, Benilo. You mentioned a couple of things, very important things. And I never thought about diversity, equity, and inclusion the way I'm thinking about it now from what you said. We know from literature and from practice, even when diversity is spoken about, disability is usually left behind. I've gone to a meeting where we were supposed to present. Everybody presented, and thank you very much. We're like, no, but disability studies has not. Oh yes, we have disability studies. Sorry, we left you out. That's just very minor thing. But normally when diversity and even when transformation is spoken about, disability is usually not part of it. It's usually race, gender, and the rest of it. Disability is usually, last. And in fact, almost every literature, whenever they are talking about anything, you will always see a disability the last. Oh, race, gender, and disability. Blah blah blah. When you will look at studies that talk about the importance of language, importance of how we frame language, and how that is also disabling. Always putting disability as the and. it has impact. So it's making me think about diversity, inclusion, because every time I'm watching about looking at it, I see different. And I'm sure you would have heard in the US, they're actually kicking against it. In fact, they've turned it around, saying that DEI is lowering the standards. That's what they called it. And that's a common theme we hear when we talk about disability. If you talk about inclusion of children, learners with intellectual impairment or cognitive at schools, you will hear one of the arguments that, oh, we're going to reduce the standards of the curriculum or whatever, which is not true. Okay. So very, very important. But the last part I want to talk about is, if you remember, we talked about that article, which is a key article for this course, which is the Broderick and Lavani's disconscious ableism, and those 3 levels. We talked about it. So it's always good for you guys to ascertain, analyze from someone's view, at what level do they see disability? Are they still looking at it with the medical model level, deficit level, or are they progressed to disability as diversity? And I told you guys, there's a big danger at being stuck at disability as diversity, because you will feel that we've included people with disability. You will not look at the structural and systemic barriers, because without looking at the structural and systemic barriers, you're only providing partial inclusion, and in many ways, the inclusion is not even happening. So always look at it, so that when you are pitching, if you are pitching an awareness or anything, you are pitching it at the right level. If you know that the person is still at deficit view, you know that your awareness needs to start at the context of disability. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to put that.
Can I just add as well?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about what you're saying, right? And even at an institutional level, higher education, I can tell you that where I'm at the moment, I'm not making the best of friends. Because I speak about disability all the time. Now, remember, I'm in the inclusive education department, and the statements are being made like, inclusion is not just about disability, which marginalizes disability again. Even when you say it's not just about disability, you're once again marginalizing disability. Then we're speaking about inclusion, and then I question how assignments are being done and how activities are being done. And they say, no, this is inclusion. I'm like, no, you can imagine it's inclusion, but it's actually not inclusion, So even at those levels, and so government is not the only people doing this. It's happening everywhere where people, and this is why, going back to it again, awareness is so important. When Judy asked me to go to Zambia and do that project, I don't know if you know about that project in Zambia, Ike and Paul, but we did the training there were colleges that were there, and then there were mothers of children with cerebral palsy. We had a physiotherapist, fully trained, ready to go, who was annoyed at me for keep going back to disability and speaking about terminology and all those, all the things that are important to us as disability activists or practitioners or in academia. And you'll find the resistance. The point is, you'll find the resistance everywhere. Yeah. So it doesn't matter which institution, it doesn't matter whether it's at UCT or UNISA, it doesn't matter whether it's out in Zambia with a fully fledged qualified physiotherapist who's worked for many, many years. This particular physiotherapist, as lovely as she was, she really approached things in a medical model manner. She was all about fixing and fixing and fixing, and rather just sort of not understanding the other issues related to that. And so I think maybe that's why Judy said because we had to speak about these things, and even the beliefs in Zambia around mothers and children with CP. So the point being, resistance is everywhere, and we need to continue with our awareness no matter where we at. And sometimes it's not going to be received well, but it has to be done if this is what we call ourselves, disability practitioners or activists, whatever it is.
So let me add to that, Chantal. That was brilliant. Thanks for bringing that out. Now, people, imagine Chantal experiencing that. You and I who are able-bodied. Now, imagine how persons with disabilities feel and how that impacts on their confidence. When I did a little of masters and the PhD, when I did that, participants were telling me that I always feel as if I am the problem. Because every time they'll be like, oh, so if you say, oh, what is it again? Oh my goodness, what is the job? So that's what Chantal is talking about. You go, oh my goodness, here she goes again. She's the person that is talking about, she wants to talk about disability. So you can see what Chantal is talking about, that the person was visibly upset that she keeps talking. And I've gone through several projects where I have to continually raising the issue of disability, and I can see on the faces of the participants that they're like, you know what, can we move on from this? I'm like, no, we can't move on. This is why we're even on projects that were focused on disability. On projects that were focused on disability. So I said, I don't care. I will be a thorn. I don't care. And that's where our activism comes in. We must continually speak up and continually say what is this, because they know it's right, but they don't want to, So thanks for that. They start thinking, oh, what you're saying is a waste of time, Nah.
Yeah.
It's
no,
not.
but you have to. I mean,
you have to. Yeah. Okay, Mbali says, okay, I think we'll go up to most 5:15, and then we'll end it. So in about 20 minutes time, then we'll end it. Afikila, I will come to you now. Afikila has woken up. Good. I'll come to you now. And Mbali says, when we always point out that there are people with disabilities in our institution or class, does this make them feel separate and excluded, or does it help us remember their needs and include them better? How can we talk about disability in a way that shows it as a part of normal human life? So that is a tricky line to thread.
Yeah.
The best thing will be ask the person with a disability.
Yeah.
Ask the person with a disability how they feel about it. Because Mbali, I have met people with disabilities who tell me I don't want to be called a person with a disability.
Yes.
Yeah, in my master's, I met one of my participants said, no, please don't call me a person with a disability. So ask the person with a disability. They are the best person that will tell you if it's okay or not. Yeah. And then Masabata says, part of my work is to facilitate capacity building for civil society organization. I see an opportunity in this content. Great. Okay, Afikile, you have the floor.
Okay, I just want to add on what Chantal just said about the physiotherapy, focusing solely on the medical model of rehabilitating the patient without looking at the broader factors that would affect his participation within her everyday environment and community. My little brother, he experienced that as well. He was in varsity, and then he is staying in res. So he had an injury, and then he had to go for a knee operation. And then at the time of his discharge, they do not do environmental screening to check on the factors that would influence her independence, his participation at school and at his community. So as a result, they just discharged him, and he was staying on the second floor at his res. There were stairs, no no lifts, and then he was unable to walk by himself. He needed someone to support him, so for walking, and someone to also support him during the day, prepare meals, assist him going to the bathroom, and so on. But they do not consider that even when he tried to raise such concerns, they just said the hospital is full, So unfortunately, they cannot accommodate him, and it's his problem to look at those things and to find solution for such. So it's really unfair how some physiotherapists, they just look at patient on the medical model lens only. Yeah.
Well, if
It
it's not, thanks, Afikile. One of the issues that's why we also talk about curriculum. If it's not in the curriculum, don't learn it. And that's why you see social workers coming to do the PhD in disability studies, because they mostly tell us that it's not really something that is factored in the curriculum. Yeah. Yeah. You're very, very right. And in some ways that can lead, I see your hand, in some ways that can lead to secondary complications. I mean, we're just talking about, isolation. That can lead someone who's recovering to go into, depression.
Yes.
Because they are not able to engage, because
Yeah.
those ways that will integrate them with society has
Yes.
not been considered. It's all just, and see, that's one very key distinction in the global north. Which person, I don't know, Chantal and Pearl, if you've come across this, which as I read in some literature from the global north, which some persons with disabilities were talking about. So the global north is, is generally said these resources are available, persons with disabilities are included. But persons, Brian talked about this, persons with disabilities over there some of them were saying that there's an attitude whereby because they feel, you have a wheelchair now, there's a ramp available, there's a screen reader, you can get access to screen reader, the sign language interpreter, the people start paying less attention to the experience of disability, the experience of impairment that people have. So if someone is like feeling depressed, or someone is feeling that they cannot participate because they have chronic pain, so they were complaining about that. Yes, it's true. Social model, and that's one of the critiques of the social model. The social model really helped us do a lot of, gain a lot of inclusion and participation, but we must also be cognizant that's the other aspect of the experience of the impairment, which is also there, and that which, like I said, the term they usually use that no amount of fixing the environment will fix chronic pain.
Yes.
Yeah, will fix chronic pain. We need medicine, or and the rest of it. Okay, so be mindful of that. Be thinking that the social model is great. Don't get me wrong, and it will continue to lead to participation in society for decades and years to come. And that's why you people are scholars, and that's why I keep telling you, don't just swallow a framework or a model. Look at it critically. What is it not addressing? What is it addressing? And then frame your arguments around that. Yeah. Okay, who had their hand up? It was Alice. Alice, go ahead. You have like 14 minutes to go.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ike. See, now the thing is, I'm not really sure if this has been spoken about, or if we did speak about it in some other lectures, or yeah. I think maybe it would be just a refresher. But my question was, like, when we're talking about SPID, we frame the inclusion of them in terms of the services that we give them and the support. But from a human rights perspective, what does it mean to actually give to actually say a person with SPID has the full human rights or the humanity of a person to make decisions when certain important or certain aspects are absent, for speech or independence are absent. So how do we actually bring in that whole idea of saying, okay, a person with SPID has been fully included from a human rights perspective?
Okay, Chantal and Pearl, can I come in there? Alice, I would say that is what we want you guys to formulate in the responses you give to, because I don't want us to give you the answer. That from what you are learning from what you're learning from the course, from what we've been discussing, from what you learned from first semester, you come up, because that's a little bit of what you'll be doing for the exam, which when I post it, we're going to have a discussion around it. You guys, from what you've learned, you have, what I would say is that you have the tools and ingredients now to pull together a whole, remember I keep talking about it, by the end of this course, you must have a DSE approach, a disability studies in education approach. If you don't have it, then I don't know why you're in this course. If by the end we're finishing this course, you've not been able to transition to a disability studies in education approach to inclusion of learners with disabilities, then you've missed a big aspect of this course. So Alice, hold that question. That is the question that will mostly come out for your exam. So people, start thinking about it. You have all the tools. All the things we've done in the weeks provide you with the tools. The information we've captured there, thank goodness they are recorded, are all there. So I don't want, because Pearl and Chantal will start giving you the answers, and I want you to think it out, because it will help you. When you're able to reflect on the answers, you capacitate yourself, you expand your reasoning to say, okay, this is actually needed, and you're able to tap into the multiple levels we're talking about. Okay, Alice, sorry for that.
But Alice, we did touch on this earlier.
Yeah.
If you listen to this again, you will find that in the question that you asked me, we did touch on it. Maybe you were just phrasing it a bit differently now, or because listening to the entire lecture, now you've got other perspectives. So listen to the entire recording. You'll get all your answers for the exam.
I was trying to fish out the answer without Dr. Ikeri in my
I know them. They're very tricky, Chantal and my parents.
He's clever. He's clever,
yes,
Alice.
She's not the only one. And Masabata asked the same question. This is what you guys are supposed to do. So they're very tricky. They try to, get you to. So yeah. So
we would have done it as well. We would have done it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So now I want to any question from people who have not asked questions. So from Kelebuhi, I don't know whether he's back. So Doreen, not heard from you. Has Mandisa said anything? I can't remember. Oh, Mandisa said she can't. I think Mandisa said she can't speak because I can't remember who said so now. Doreen?
Yes.
What are your views?
Hi, everyone.
You usually have very strong opinions. Let's say your views.
I think this is emotional for me.
Emotional.
Yeah, it's too emotional for me. So I've been listening because there's so many experiences, as Chantal is mentioning, that people are not coming through and they don't want to support. Because I was talking to one of the campus rectors of one university, and he was telling me that what he does in his campus, he will just say, we don't have this program. If somebody like with an intellectual disability comes, they will claim that there is no program that they are looking for. So it's a bit emotional, and I think we are stepping up somewhere. And yeah, I think we should advocate. We should not stop the awareness. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so one thing I want to sound, because it happened with a previous student, Chantal and Perry might not know about it, or maybe Perry, maybe not, I don't know. But it happened with a previous student who, the student, I don't want to mention the name, but the student came from an NGO that provides funds to fund learners with disabilities in learnerships. So after she did the course, she now felt as if they are not doing they're not doing anything meaningful in the organization. So I had to have a meeting with her. People, you have to realize any small gain is a win. Please keep this in mind. Any small gain you make in terms of awareness, in terms of participation, is a win, because we are looking at a section of our society that has been systematically excluded for a long
time. That's true, Ike.
So, exactly. So if not, Chantal, myself, and Pearl would have given up. There's a time I wanted to quit from UCT. I said to myself, but if you quit, who will do it? So we learned to celebrate our small wins. We celebrate our small wins and we continue. So I just want to sound that don't get into that trap of thinking that, because you are not doing the questions now, Alice and Masaba asked, because you're not doing the full inclusion, that you're not, no. You have to celebrate the wins, and we keep making progress and keep going and keep going. What you're saying is very important. Is what, if you remember, is what Chantal and Pearl, Benedict came last week. Benedict told us that one of the challenges was restriction of subjects which students with disabilities can undertake. So they were usually excluded from the STEM, subjects, at school. Learners with profound severe to profound intellectual disabilities don't even come near that. They are not even in the radar of consideration. So it's very important. When that medical student asked me this question, I didn't know what to say at first. When he asked me, the student know about it. When I was going to teach fourth-year medical students, these are students who are going to become doctors. So he asked me, okay, but how can we think of including someone who is blind to become a surgeon? So in my mind, I thought about it, and I said, okay, yes, you're making sense. But I threw the question back at him. I said, okay, let me ask you this. I say, have you at any point in your medical training thought about inclusion of someone who's blind? He said, no. I said, so if you don't think about it, how do you think you will get a solution? I said, all the inclusion you see will happen. I said, before we didn't have Braille. Before we didn't have sign language. All these things required people to think about it. And then when I came up with a way. And I said, yeah, so you as a medical student, start thinking about it. Start thinking. We talked about it last week. One way to start the process might be the area of research, might be the area of other areas that surround surgery. We now have AI. You never know. But the thing is, we have to think about the participation, and then that's only when we now start seeing changes.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe this is the last part. If nobody has question. Mbali posted something extensive, so let me read it. Mbali says, disability awareness campaigns raise an important debate, but do they genuinely promote inclusion, or do they sometimes operate more like charity projects that make society feel good without changing deeper inequalities? This is how Brian's tones. I know awareness can challenge stereotypes, give visibility to people with disabilities, and ensure their needs are not ignored. However, when framed only in terms of pity and charity, such campaigns risk reinforcing exclusion by positioning disabled people as passive recipients of help rather than equal members of the community. We need move beyond the charity model towards a framework of justice and rights where awareness is not about feeling better, but about transforming attitudes, policies, and practices. As Eva Kite, Ethics of Care reminds us, dependency is a universal human condition. And in African thoughts, especially Ubuntu, inclusion means recognizing that we all exist through one another.
I'm sorry for the typos in what I was writing. This, I was referring to my other question where I was asking, us always mentioning that we need to include people with disabilities. Isn't that part of excluding them? This is just part of it. Because also when we do these awarenesses with people who are, let me say, normal people who don't have any disability. But now we'll always mention that so-and-so cannot walk, so-and-so. Are we not excluding them by always mentioning these things? This comes from that. It's not a new thing. I was just adding from that to that.
Okay, thanks. Anybody has comments? Nothing I can. Yeah. All right. Okay. Mbali, thanks for that. That's very, very true. The nature of the awareness is important because the person giving the awareness has to have been someone whose mind has shifted from deficit to asset. So if you're giving awareness around disability, it shouldn't, the centering on impairment is a challenge. So that's something you're supposed to be grabbing from this course. Yes, it's true. Of course, everybody has needs. I go to the hospital when I'm sick. You go to the hospital when you're sick, if you need this or that, you need the doctor. So same thing with people with disabilities. If there's a challenge with impairment, they will need to go and get this or that or this. But what we're talking about is participation. Full participation in society. So if an awareness is centering only on impairment, that person is actually introducing a medical model view. It's not an inclusive view, because inclusion is in terms of the person fully participating as much as possible, like you and I, in society, in every aspect of society. Yeah. So very important to make that distinction in terms of raising awareness. Because you're right, if someone goes in and is talking about, oh, they can't do this, oh, they can't do that, can we donate money? That's a charity, and it's not a rights-based approach. Does not respect the dignity, does not see persons with disabilities as full-fledged human beings. So you're right. That then reinforces, it actually does more harm than what it's trying to, So that's why you never hear in this course or in this program, the program focusing only on impairment. We talk about impairment, but because we need to know about the impairment. That's part of it. But it's about full participation. And DSC frames it very nicely. It says, in terms of education, access, full participation, achievement. Very important. Because sometimes we think the learners with disabilities who finish that school or university must be able to get jobs too, like you and I. It's not enough for them to just get a degree. They must be able to get jobs. Because if you don't get jobs, you are not fully participating. You can't take care of your family. You start to depend on other people for, support. Yeah. So very, 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 very important. And lastly, what I want to say, don't forget what keeps me in disability sector and disability discipline is that I found that as we are including disability, we end up including everybody. That's what I found. The more we include disability, we end up including everybody. Some of the students were, so this course forced me to focus on captions.
Yes.
On making sure there are captions and everything. And some of the students have been saying that, in fact, one student said that they cannot actually go through a lecture without they actually go through it with the captions and things like that. And that's it. That's how it is. You have ramp. It's not only for someone on a wheelchair. It's for people, mothers on prams and people, delivery people, and the rest of it. Yeah. So that's one of the joys of being in the disability sector, in that when you include disability, you actually end up including, everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
Ike, can I just do a follow-up from there quickly?
Go ahead,
please go ahead. I like that you said that now, because it's exactly what I was hoping to raise in this session. And if you include persons with disabilities, you include everyone. Now, what I found in my study was that we were looking, ultimately, the findings started looking at what does education look like for a learner with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. It proved in the study that they are educable, obviously. It looked at responsive environments, and that is what is necessary for them to be educated. And it looked at things like empathy and the importance of empathy. And these things are what we are placing at the periphery of education in mainstream at the moment, where they should be at the center of education at the moment. They are all add-ons at the moment. When we start looking at the curriculum is here, and we start looking around us, and we're talking about social emotional support, and we're talking about poverty and a nutritional program and those sorts of things. Those things are core. Curriculum should come afterwards. Those are the things that are going to be able to assist the learner to access education. And so I think it's important for us to start thinking about how we educating our learners at the moment, and how much we can learn from educating learners with severe to profound intellectual disabilities, and what kind of contribution that will make to mainstream education.
Exactly. And that's what I keep talking about. I mean, we talk about, we start talking about confidence, start talking about self-efficacy, start talking about agency. These are all the things all students need in order to be able to succeed within education. So, all right. Thanks so much, Chantal, for that. I'll just read the last two comments and then we end. If not, students want to try to take onwards. All right. So I've read Mbali's already. So Afikile says, it's true. He also experienced secondary as he had to cancel some of his modules, calling on friends to take care of him, which also negatively affected his dignity and led him to a state of depression. There we go. It didn't only affect him, it also affected us as a family. Even some lecturers refused to provide him reasonable accommodation. This highlights how secondary disability is produced through ableist structures rather than an individual impairment, and harms the entire support system, not just the individual, and it's also the so this is very, very critical. So you see how just that action can lead family members, people can go into, maybe the mother can go into depression because of that. And these are the primary support structures for that student. Yeah, so very, very true. Then Kelebuhile says, Kelebuhile, welcome. He says, I think one of the, not welcome, sorry, I'm sure you've always been there, but contributed now. He says, I think one of the major challenges in disability inclusion is the gap between legal recognition and lived reality. So, Kelebuhile, that's why sometimes my thoughts goes to, I need to make a lot of friends with people in the legal department, people in law, and people in political science, because I don't know, how do we just get these guys to see that policy is just half of it, implementation is the completion of it. You know, you cannot just do nice policies and then that's it. Anyway, yeah, disability organizations have worked for decades to advocate for disability rights, influence legislation and policies, and raise public awareness. However, persons with disabilities continue to experience prejudice, stigma, and exclusion in their everyday lives. This suggests that changing laws is necessary, yes, but it is not sufficient, yes. We also need to transform attitudes. That's the biggest one for me. And I don't know how we do that. It's the biggest one. Anyway, transforming attitudes, institutional practices, and power relations. For me, the question is no longer only whether persons with disabilities have rights on paper, but whether those rights are actually experienced in practice. Let me add to that, Kelebuhile. A participant in my PhD study said he feels like he doesn't have, I have to put it right, how he put it. He feels like he doesn't have, he feels like he doesn't have the right to education, but he's fighting for the right to education. That's the way he framed it. I'm not putting it right. The way he put it is like the right to education is the English. He said the right to education is I can't remember the word. Something that is not attainable. It's not, it's not meant to be attainable. It's not meant to be attained. It's meant to be symbolic. Yeah, it's meant to be symbolic to say we have it there, but not really practically. So he's saying that he's feeling that he's fighting for the right to get the right to education. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay, then Afikile says, the last thing Afikile says, that in some institutions, accommodation is still treated as optional or discretionary. According to the DSC framework, this is not a neutral pedagogical decision. It is an ableist practice that actively disables the students by maintaining barriers that could be removed. The refusal also reinforces a deficit narrative. Yeah, it's all the things we'll be speaking about. It's what Chantel spoke about, where the person who is supposed to know, a health professional, was visibly getting upset that she keeps talking about disability. Yeah. All right, people. Thanks Chantal and Pearl. You can see the effect you've had. Thank you very much. You even brought some of my students who did not ask any questions out to come and communicate. Sandra. Okay, people. This is the last thing I'm reading. I'm reading Isanda's post last, okay, and then we end off. Isanda says, I agree with both points, and I think they actually connect. The gap between legal recognition and lived reality shows that having rights and policies in place does not automatically remove the barriers people with disability experience. At the same time, when reasonable accommodation is treated as optional, it shows how these barriers can be reproduced through institutional practices. Yeah, this makes me think about the role of power. Power in disability inclusion. Who gets to decide whether an accommodation is reasonable or whether it is necessary? If the person experiencing the barrier is not involved in that decision, we can easily end up with systems that claim to be inclusive while still excluding people in practice. For me, meaningful inclusion, therefore, requires more than challenging policies. It requires institutions to change how they understand disability, listen to people with disabilities, and take responsibility for removing barriers. Otherwise, we risk having inclusion on paper while exclusion continues in everyday practice. Yeah, nice summaries. Nice summaries. All right, Pearl and Shanta, thank you so much for a very rich conversation, and detailed and meaningful and emotional. I tell students from the beginning that this we're not only challenging you intellectually, we're also challenging you emotionally, and things like that. So hearing some students say they were emotional about it, that's part of the course, people. That's part of the course. So thank you very much for joining us. And students, thanks for the engagement. And any last words? Want to say any last words, both of you? Otherwise,
Can I just say thank you to you, Ike, for inviting me. Thank you to my colleague, ex-colleague Pearl, and then thank you to the students for their engagement. It's been wonderful being back here in the UCT space again. So thank you so much for the enriching conversations and the dialogues and everything. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chantal. Pearl, anything else?
Thank you from my side as well, Ike. I think I'm jealous. I don't think I've experienced such student engagement as a tutor before, so I'm a bit jealous, but it was lovely being here today. I'm taken out of my comfort zone. I think Mbali is the person that's taken me the most out of my comfort zone, reminding me. So I'm left here having to go back to my books and actually just get my life together again. So Mbali, thank you so much. But it was lovely being with you, and all the best for the remainder of the course, guys.
Thank you. Thanks both. Okay, everybody, thank you. Bring your conversations in the online space, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.